Welcome to Vitafriends Voices, a podcast brought to you by Vitaflo, where we will share your stories. Each episode will bring you engaging interviews with inspiring individuals who are either living with a protein disorder or are experts at the forefront of their field.
Today, we've got Suzanne Ford with us, who is a dietitian with 15 years experience in managing adults with inborn errors of metabolism. You might also know Suzanne from her work with NSPKU, where she supports and champions the PKU community with information online and in magazines and organizes a variety of meetings and ways for the community to connect. Suzanne will weigh in on the various topics we've covered in Series 2 and give her expert perspective. We'll explore common themes, take a look at the various challenges our guests have faced and how they've overcome them, as well as look back on the many successes our guests have shared throughout the second season. So welcome to the Vitafriends Voices podcast, Suzanne.
Thank you very much for having me, Kit, and thank you, Graham.
You're welcome.
So just before we begin, maybe tell our audiences a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a dietitian and I have two jobs. So I work in the NHS in Bristol and I work mostly with adults. And then my other job is as the NSPKU Society dietitian. So I work kind of with children and adults in that role and do lots of different things.
And how did you fall into the NSPKU role?
Well, that's a good question. There was a conference happening near me and I got involved, and that was 2016. And then I thought, well, this is quite fascinating, actually. So I ended up organising the one the next year, which you were a guest at, I think, a speaker at.
I remember, yeah.
Yes, I've been in the job ever since. So that was, I started in 2016 doing that. And I'd been working with adults in Bristol for 5 or 6, 7 years before that. Yeah.
So almost a 10-year anniversary at the NSPKU.
Yes.
Wow. So for our global audience, Suzanne, can you just sort of outline the NSPKU and what it does?
Yeah, so the NSPKU has its main mission to support and educate the families and the PKU community. So it could be individuals living with PKU, or it could be their families, their parents, their caregivers, their extended family, or even teachers, other healthcare professionals like GPs and so on. And so we're trying to create like a community where people get together and meet face to face, but also lots more besides on our website, and we have YouTube channels as well.
You do a lot. That was a quick summary of what you have achieved. But what is your specific role, I suppose, within the NSPKU at the moment?
Well, I guess that I check some of the content of the things that we want to put out. I help create links between different people in the community who might not have met each other and who could work together. Like I might find somebody who could write a column for us in our magazine, that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of good work. I guess for anyone listening or watching, how can they get involved with the NSPKU or a patient association should they want to?
Well, I think that just think about what you'd like to give, what skills you have, what you enjoy doing, and then get in contact with us. So our website is www.nspku.org, and we have a Get Involved drop-down menu with membership. So that'd be a first thing. If you're not a member, do join, £20 a year. And that is, I don't know if you're going to edit this out, but I think it's better value and cheaper than a bottle of gin. So £20 a year, bargain. But volunteering, you can contact us at info@nspku.org and say how you'd like to help, what you'd like to get involved with. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So that's the NSPKU within the UK. Do you have any links with any other global patient associations?
We do talk to the other global PKU associations. So we talk to NPKUA sometimes in America, Flock, How Much Fee, and we kind of collaborate sometimes. So, for instance, phenylalanine analysis of foods. We might talk to the other guys about that. In Europe, we talk to ESPKU, and that incorporates, I think, about 40 plus European PKU organisations. So we'll just dip in and out with specific questions like, somebody wanted a Latvian translation of blah, blah, blah thing.
Okay.
Do you link in with Metabolic UK as well?
Yes, certainly. Talk to them quite regularly, actually, about UK-based concerns that might affect people who've got a low-protein diet for non-PKU disorders, which there are quite a few, as you know, because you have talked to people who have these conditions. Yeah,
absolutely.
Some of your guests.
So in your day-to-day job, I know that you don't just manage PKU as an adult dietitian, you also manage the other disorders, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. So I do have experience and I have responsibility for people with tyrosinaemia, with HCU and other disorders, MSUD and so on, yeah.
Brilliant, okay. And I suppose if we look at season 2 of the Vitafriends Voices podcast, there's been, like you mentioned there, we've had PKU, we've had HCU, we've had TYR. There's a lot of common themes as well throughout, wasn't there?
Absolutely, yes. So I really thought when watching these that the common themes mean that watching all of the podcasts, no matter what your disorder, if you're following a low protein diet or a lower protein diet, then it's probably really helpful to be watching these podcasts and seeing what others' experiences are and what tips and tricks, if you like, they could share. Yeah,
because they can certainly learn from each other.
Is there any one theme that sticks out from all the episodes, Suzanne?
I think basically networking or creating support for yourself. So there was nobody who was interviewed who was like doing it all by themselves in secret. The people who we can see that you talk to had really positive experiences of getting help from others. And they were happy and confident to ask for that help, to share their disorder with other people and to build their confidence sharing that. So I don't think, although all your guests to me sounded super confident, I don't think they all started off super confident, but they grew their confidence. And I thought that was really interesting. And Ema, I think in particular, she described how she grew her confidence. And I thought that was really helpful. Yeah.
And we know that's not always the case, that people are confident in reaching out to others. And like you said, and it was really well explained there, like they grew their confidence to do so. And by doing it, they became more confident. They can now sit here on this couch and talk about it and inspire others. What would your advice be from someone sitting on their couch at home thinking, oh, I wish I had that confidence? What would your advice be to them to get started?
I do think watching the podcasts is a good, helpful way to start if you're like sitting at home quietly by yourself and you haven't told people that you work with or that you go to college with or whatever, that you've got your condition. Maybe watching the podcast, getting some ideas, but just I think starting off telling one person and seeing what that reaction is. And Ema, who has HCU, she described in the podcast she described really well that she started to explain it. And the more she explained it, the easier it became. And she got used to explaining it. And then it just wasn't a thing. And in fact, she, I think, became quite passionate about explaining her HCU. She said she would stop and draw the diagrams for whoever would like stay still long enough to listen, which I thought was quite lovely. But yeah, she just described really well that she didn't just start off wanting to, with a burning desire to tell everyone that it got easier. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that because in Nicole's episode as well, she says that she now has an elevator pitch. that she uses every time she describes her PKU. She has a specific thing that she says, and then people really engages with that, and they ask her questions, and it's just a really nice conversation starter.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So you've talked there about sort of confidence. Anything else that came through in the episodes?
Yeah, I mean, I think in every step of the way, people were not letting their disorder stop them. They had reached out for help or created this support network that they had around them. So friends, etc., teachers in some cases, I think, and like your partner or your mum, but there was some planning involved. So I noticed that, people were talking about traveling, or Lorraine in particular described in quite a bit of detail, really helpful, about how with her son Harry, when they go on a family holiday, and she has two other boys, Niall and Dara. So Lorraine described how she involved Niall and Dara in helping to find places where they might eat, and they would go out beforehand. Niall and Dara would go out beforehand and look for restaurants that Harry might want to eat in, and there would be choices for Harry and his low protein diet. I thought that was really impressive, and it just showed a bit of advanced planning and just going there to make that family occasion really smooth for Harry.
Yeah. And making the others feel involved too,
Yes.
right? Because I can imagine having a small family and wanting to make sure that you're not giving your attention entirely to one child. You need to almost try to develop that dynamic of, oh, we're doing this together.
Yes, you're right, actually. And I did reflect on that as well. That was another aspect to it. So creating a kind of joint goal, shared goal, probably quite important.
Yeah, that family support is so important, isn't it?
And how did you feel as a dietitian with lots of years' experience in this field when Helen and Steve described their dietitians as their best friends?
Yes, I love that bit. So it's true that during pregnancy with PKU, there's an awful lot of contact between the woman who's pregnant and the partner as well on the phone, and the dietetic team, for sure. So I think Helen and Steve described that whole pregnancy experience, or the two pregnancy experiences they'd had, and the preparation they did. They described that really accurately, and it is true. It needs thinking about, it needs planning. You need to ask for help. In this case, they were helping each other. Steve in particular was very imaginative with all of the food that he'd prepared, tagines and so on. And they were getting the help that they needed from their metabolic team as well. Yeah,
he was incredibly supportive.
Yeah. Definitely.
He was.
So I suppose in particularly in that episode, I guess you have worked with a lot of maternal PKU patients. We have worked together on patients as well. And what is your experience of it? I think often we almost know they're pregnant before their partners do.
Yes.
So what is that relationship like, I suppose?
I think it can be quite intense. And I think in some cases, actually, we do have to prepare our patients, the women that we are going to be speaking quite often. Sometimes it's in my case, it's an email back and forth sometimes. But nevertheless, there will be a lot of contact. And you can't get away from that because there's a journey there nutritionally. And the women who are pregnant with PKU, their needs change, and the changes in their blood phenylalanine, in particular in the second half of pregnancy, can really happen rapidly. So 2 or 3 times a week, you're changing the protein prescription for the natural protein. And as I think Steve described it, it's like, well, you do actually have to have that protein because the baby's needing it, and the blood phenylalanine levels dropping indicate that. So it is a very rigid dietary regime to be having during that time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also particularly if a woman is really struggling to keep anything down with morning sickness and things, oftentimes you can feel like a bit of the bad cop when you go, well, you're going to have to drink your protein substitute again. You're going to have to get those exchanges in, grams of protein. So it's,
It's grim. Yes.
Yes.
No denying it.
Nope. It's not an easy feat. They made it sound easy, also acknowledging that it was difficult, but Helen did just such an amazing job. And I like the way that she was referring to it as, it's the greatest motivation you could ever have to follow the diet.
That's right. And I think actually it's important, although I say it's grim, and I think it is a really tough journey to go on, it's doable. Mm-hmm. Steve and Helen's podcast with you is really illustrating that this is an achievable thing with planning, the preparation, the support that they gave each other, and the practical support Steve gave Helen. That it's doable to have your PKU well controlled through pregnancy and before in the run up as well.
And this goes for some of the rare disorders as well, doesn't it?
Certainly does. Yes. Yeah. Occasionally, of things like as Kit says, during the really difficult morning pregnancy stages, or you need to reduce your phenylalanine exchanges. That means you have to temporarily have even less protein, natural protein each day. And then also we have to be very encouraging. It's really important to reassure people, to encourage them, to say you can do this. It's not impossible. And we have our patients and people like Helen and Steve who are testament to the fact that this is possible to have a family and to have a very healthy family. Yes.
And I think it's important just to touch on here that if there's someone listening or watching and they might have an unplanned pregnancy, please don't be afraid to reach out to the metabolic center. If anything, please do so, so that you can start treatment and follow the right plan and get the right things in place.
Yes, certainly straight away do contact your metabolic team. And if you don't have a metabolic team at the moment, for whatever reason, that's no problem. Again, the NSPKU has a role to play in this because we can signpost people to where your nearest centre would be. So you can email info@nspku.org and we will say, yes, you need to ring this or this centre because they're the nearest to you.
That brings us nicely then on to return to diet with Max and Harold and Stu. Is there anything you want to sort of highlight from both of those episodes?
Well, I do. As it happens, I want to first of all mention the very important feature of Stu's tattoo. And so I implore viewers to, if you haven't noticed it, the most fantastic feature on Stu's arm, which he had on the sofa, like here, was his phenylalanine tattoo. So that's the chemical symbol for phenylalanine, which is the amino acid that people with PKU can't metabolize. And Stu has really, I think it's just a really good example of just absorbing PKU into your whole identity and just saying, this is me. And this came up a couple of times actually in your podcast, at least twice, with people saying, "Yeah, this is me." So that was the first thing to say, a little light-hearted comment about Stu and his podcast. But yeah, it was really interesting. Stu and Harold were both very committed. They thought about what their health meant to them. They thought about the importance of it. They thought about the here and now. I think perhaps in Harold's case, it was like, well, this is a no-brainer. In Stu, he took a little bit longer, didn't he? Did some research. He kind of checked out what he'd heard and he wanted to make sense of it for himself. And then they both decided prioritize our health for now and for the future and put some planning in place. I think they both went for it, actually. So I think, if I remember, Stu said, well, my dietitian said, do it gradually. He said, I started off doing it gradually, but then I just went for it. So that was interesting because he took control of it himself. Yeah.
And Stu, it's interesting with him because he's almost at the beginning of his journey, going back on diet and really finding his feet and using drug therapy now as well to help him eat more protein. So it's really interesting having him on the couch because you almost got an insight into what it's like to change your diet, not completely, but, being quite strict, but then expanding your food choices and so forth along the way.
Yes, he I think at one stage when he returned to diet, he was taking something like 8 exchanges, and I can't remember if he said what exchanges he was having with Sapropterin, but I think it would have been in the 30s, wasn't it?
I think it's about 24 from what we last heard.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
But
so a significant increase.
Significantly higher, 3 times as much then. So that, I think, will have been really interesting for him. But he'd been on quite a journey, hadn't he? 3.5 years or whatever of his return to diet. And he said its levels were 1,700 at one stage. And then he got them down to 320 and started to notice, no headaches.
And really quickly they went down too. So it's interesting. He was actually saying how he had these symptoms when he had really high levels. And then because the levels came down so quickly, he was then experiencing those symptoms again because they just dropped so quickly.
Yeah.
And then within days it sort of settled itself. But those are the things that you have to manage too, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. There's a lot to take on board. There's the monitoring that Stu was doing with his bloods and learning what that meant to him and how he felt. And Harold the same. Harold didn't talk about his levels very much, but he certainly described that he'd had that change in his function. He was able to do more at work, and he said he was taking on bigger projects that he didn't think he could have done before. All his colleagues noticed that his energy levels were higher, and he was just sustaining that energy through his working day. And I think for him it took some work to do, but he was really linking that work to the rewards of how he felt.
And I think that's important to acknowledge, isn't it? It's not easy. It's a lot of work, but with the support of others, you can get there. And I quite liked with Harold and Max, the relationship they had between, healthcare professional and patient. It's just a nice chemistry and a nice relationship they have built along the way.
Yes, and I think that mutual respect between healthcare professionals and a patient, that's actually quite important. That's a strange thing about the NSPKU is that in one half of my job, I think of people as patients, and the other half of my job, they're not patients actually. So people. People who are patients, having a good, warm relationship, mutual respect with healthcare professionals is helpful to that. Yeah.
And you picked up there, Suzanne, about how sort of Stu in particular sort of really took on the diet and, wanted to sort of move things along quicker. Do you find that with patients you've seen over the years who return to diet?
Sometimes, yes. I know that people do a lot of figuring things out for themselves, and I totally respect that because I'm the person sitting in the clinic. They're the people who are out there 24/7 living the life with PKU and adapting it. And I can't always be there like in the 24/7 going, and what are you going to do now? And what's happening this weekend, or what are the holiday plans or whatever. So yes, people need to get information from us as healthcare professionals and then sometimes apply it in the way that works for them, actually, that's sustainable. Yeah.
And that's a really good point. Our healthcare professionals are there to guide the patients. They're not living it day to day. The same with patient associations. You're guiding in a way, providing education and support. Same with industry to a certain extent. We're here to try and educate and ensure that patients have got everything that they need, and healthcare professionals too. So I think it's nice to have that community come together as a whole in order to provide the best care that we can.
Yes, absolutely. There's a role for all of the parts of the equation. So there's patient community and the patient empowerment themselves. And you really had some empowered people sitting on this sofa. So pretty awesome. And then, yes, there's the organisation and industry and the healthcare services. So we all kind of can work together and bring our own contributions, I think. I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think Kit and I often say this, actually, it's such a privilege to be sat on this sofa speaking to patients and the inspiration that they give.
Yes.
And one thing that always strikes me, and I think it strikes us both as well, is how much people want to give back in terms of, whether it's sort of global or a local sort of aspect of their life, just to sort of give back. And I think that was one of the themes that came out in series 2 as well.
Yes, I really noticed that. I think that that people, all your guests had been on, if you like, a journey, which is maybe a little bit trite of a word to use, but they'd been on a long series of different experiences that had actually been really challenging and very, very difficult and dark in some cases. But actually then coming out the other side of that, I really noticed there's just a lot of power coming from the individuals and the couples or the pairings of people that you spoke to. I think that power is really important to harness that and just plow it back in, which is what you're doing.
That's a really nice mention there, Suzanne, because when we think about Harry and Lorraine, she sort of empowered him to be proud of his TYR. And what really got me with that episode was when she said that Harry ran onto the field and he said, "Mom, I can do anything." And it really just touched me. But it's that pride in being a bit different, but actually just embracing it.
Absolutely, yes. Saying this is me, and then channeling that in how you live your life and how you make your decisions, whether it holds you back or whether you think, oh, we've got this, we can work around this. Mm-hmm. And that was a common theme in many of your podcast guests as well.
Just live your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it'd be interesting to see as Harry grows older, whether he does actually take up the baton and run with it. It'll be fascinating.
So I guess with live your life, it's, a lot of the guests touched on travel and gave practical hints and tips on how you can do so. I guess from your perspective as a healthcare professional, what advice can you give to someone who might not feel that confident in traveling outside of their country?
So as with all your guests saying, and I think all of them had travel. Actually, I'm thinking that Steve and his wife had travelled. They were in Italy, weren't they? And I think there was planning. There was what foods are we going to eat when we get there. There was getting the extra stocks of your protein substitute in advance. You might, if you're a regular user of liquids, go to powders because they're lighter, easier to travel with. Split them between, if you put your luggage in the hold in the checked-in baggage, do keep some with you in the cabin. And even better, split it between different members of the family if there's like a group of you traveling. And then what you also need to do is get letters from your healthcare professionals in your metabolic team. I think it's good to screenshot those letters onto the phone as well as having hard copies. So yeah, those are my tips. Planning, and even maybe a little bit of online research to see if there's a PKU community where you're going. So for instance, if you're going to Turkey, there's a very active PKU community there. What sort of foods that might be available? I've helped somebody look into foods in an island off the coast of Honduras. So that was quite interesting. Turned out sweet potato was popular, which was good. And I think your podcast guests, they were not letting things, they were confident. They were not letting things stop and hold them back, but they were planning and they were doing working arounds, if you like.
Yeah. And just with the mention with the letter, oftentimes it's good to get 2 letters, one for security, but also one to put in your hold luggage in case they scan the suitcase and they think, oh, what's all this powder? What's all this liquid? So it's just important to put it in all the suitcases, the bags that you're carrying.
Yeah.
And another thing that was really interesting that you just mentioned was the reaching out to the community in the country that you are traveling to see what foods are available, what's really easy access. But also a lot of our guests mentioned how much they use social media to connect and build those relationships and communities.
Yes, absolutely. So if I think of HCU, I think of HCU America, a really good organization, and you could reach out and get help from them. I've had patients who are, I'm X weeks pregnant when I need to go to America for a wedding. And, we reached out to the American group there. So definitely do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even touching on weddings as well, special occasions was brought up a fair bit.
It was.
Yeah, so being prepared for those type of events.
There was lots of stuff about having snacks, extra snacks, or preparing alternatives, or yes, I do remember Skittles as well, actually, being at a children's party with Skittles. And it just shows the forethought every time, which I have to say must be a little bit tiring, but there's a commitment to your own individual health or the health of your child, your family member, to keep going and doing this because it's worth it.
And I think that came out, didn't it, as well, in terms of, different periods of people's lives, thinking about Ema in particular, in terms of her moving over from Ireland to Birmingham to go to university and how she managed that whole process. Is there any advice that you would give, Suzanne, to people who are thinking about going to university in terms of what might help them in terms of that transition period?
I think, again, the principle of creating a support network, feeling confident to say that you have a condition, feeling confident to explain it and build that confidence. Don't be afraid of saying who you are, owning that, and then you will start to create support when you need it. You might be tired, or you might, Ema described, times when Helen described times when she was tired and she was saying, what's the protein in this? I'm just too tired. And Steve was giving her the answer. Ema likewise said that her friends were saying, is that the right amount of protein? What, can you have this? Should you be? And then, the people are looking out for you. And I think you can create that when you go to a new place like a uni, but it's letting people know in the first place, because obviously people aren't mind readers, and we have to be honest that these are rare conditions. So there is a need to explain a little. But generally, everyone is interested.
Yeah, that was key, I found. Everyone's like, as soon as I open up, people want to know more. So actually, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
So if you think about your practice at the moment, where are the gaps?
Well, I think in NSPKU and generally in the metabolic community, I think the gaps, we could do more for our teenagers. I think it's hard to know what would most engage them, but I do feel that we need to keep considering them as in the forefront of our minds. I think Dr. Max pointed that out, didn't he, about preventing people from falling out of clinic, if you like. So I think the teenagers and the teenage community and what we offer them is really important. I think that it's not so much a gap, but it's paying attention to the balance between an online community within our metabolic patient groups that we're creating that's very energized and very empowered, but also just being able to continuously offer people a chance to see each other face to face. I think that's really important as well. And I think that the metabolic teams in some cases across the UK do that, and the NSPKU tries to do that, and Metabolic Support UK do as well. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's collaboration then amongst the three areas that you were talking about.
Yes. Yeah. And just continuing to find out what people want and to offer those connections in different formats. I would say the other answer to your question of what's missing or what is there more needed of is research, of course. Yeah. And that can be really researching the patient's experience, why more different drugs are required for the different treatments, for the different disorders. And then also just what are the efficacy of the medications that we do have? How are they given? Are they being used to the best possible way? Knowing more about foods, knowing more about growth, nutrition, dietetics, understanding more about the psychology of long-term conditions as well.
Yeah. So a lot still to learn and be done.
Yeah. Retirement not coming anytime soon for any of us.
Suzanne, it's been a pleasure having you on this edition of the podcast, looking back on Series 2. Many thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Kit and Graham. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. Suzanne.
And to you, if you like this episode, please like and subscribe to this podcast and share with anyone you think might benefit from tuning in. Thank you for joining our vibrant community of Vitafriends, and for more information, please visit your local Vitafriends website. We look forward to seeing you on the next series. Bye.